I'm Alan Weiss, and this is The Writing on the Wall. Welcome back to Writing on the Wall. This episode is called 5G1 Expectations. We have class reunions from our high school days, and we're heading for our 60th this coming year, 2024. And so the coordinator asked if we could send photos of our grammar and high school experiences, and I'll show you a photo. You'll see it here on the screen. And this was our 5th grade class, and you'll see a sign, and it says 5G1. This is Mrs. O'Brien's class. Maybe some of you can pick me out in the photo. But 5, obviously, 5G relates to the 5th grade. But 5G1 implies that there's a 5G2 or 3 or 4, and indeed there was a 5G2. And 5G1, now this is back in 1950 something, were the smart kids, and 5G2 were the not so smart kids. And that's how we were segregated. Guess who got the best teachers? The 5G1 kids. When I could make a case now, looking back on this, that the 5G2 kids should have gotten the best teachers, because the 5G1 kids would learn better no matter what, no matter who the teachers were. And this is a case of expectations, because occasionally a 5G2 kid would be put in the 5G1 class, but that kid would never last, because the teacher didn't have high expectations for this kid. The class didn't have high expectations for this kid. And so at the end of the year, what do you think the results were for these two groups? The 5G1 group had much higher grades than the 5G2 group. Well, let me tell you something. Many years ago, there was an experiment. 2 3rd grade teachers were told this story, that one had kids who were gifted and the other had kids who were below average in learning. And at the end of the year, sure enough, the gifted group had higher grades from the one teacher than the kids who had trouble learning did from the other teacher. But these kids were picked indiscriminately. They weren't picked based on learning or potential. They were chosen by lot and put in the 2 classes. And so the teacher's expectations colored and tainted what they did with those kids, how they viewed those kids. And I think the same applies to all of us today. We have expectations that might or might not be accurate. I tell my clients, my coaching clients all the time, find out what your buyer's expectations are and make sure they're legitimate. Make sure they're reasonable. Make sure you can meet them. Let the buyer know what your expectations are. Expectations are not always accurate or fair. They're simply expectations. And they can form terrible biases. So what does your buyer expect today? What do you expect from the buyer? What do other people expect of you? There was a study done where advertising firms in New York were asked what they thought their buyers' expectations of them were, and then they asked the clients what their expectations were about the firms. And what happened was the advertising firms thought that their buyers' expectations of them were about here, and they weren't quite meeting them. But the buyers felt that their expectations were met and surpassed by the advertising firm. What that meant was the advertising firms weren't charging enough, and they were over-delivering, compensating for what they thought were expectations not met. We have to expect the best, not the worst. Our expectations have to be for excellence, not poor performance. Have to be for strength and not fear. So don't expect people to be damaged. Don't expect you dealing with people, ironically sometimes a buyer who's smart enough to bring you in, but now you think is damaged. Don't expect people to be damaged. Expect them to be healthy adults. Expect them to be like you are, trying to do their best. Start expecting the best of people and not the worst. And now I'll give you the litmus test. Do you think you can ever meet your dog's expectations of you?